This week's podcast episode is brought to you by Insuring Income. Insuring Income is your source for all things term life insurance and own occupation disability insurance. Insuring Income has a relationship with America's top-rated term life insurance and disability insurance companies so that pharmacists like you can easily find the best solutions for your personal situation. To better serve you, Insuring Income reviews all applicable carriers in the marketplace for your desired coverage, supports clients in all 50 states, and makes sure all of your questions get answered along the way. To get quotes and apply for term, life, or disability insurance, see sample contracts from disability carriers, or learn more about these topics, visit insuringincome.com/your financial pharmacist. Again, that's insuringincome.com/your financial pharmacist.
I think improv is perfectly suited for pharmacists because it requires you to listen, be in the moment, and if you are smart, which pharmacists objectively are very smart, you can be really good at improv because you learn the patterns, you learn the rules, and as like kind of left-brainy pharmacist as that sounds, once you learn that, you can play up and find the funny.
You're listening to the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, a show all about inspiring you, the pharmacy professional, on your path towards achieving financial freedom. Hi, I'm Tim Albrecht, and this week I welcome pharmacist, improv comedian, and motivational speaker Cory Jenks onto the show. We talk about how and why he got started with this side hustle, how it has improved his ability to connect with his patients, and how you as a pharmacist can apply the valuable skills of improv comedy to create a more adaptable, empathetic, and humanizing healthcare experience. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a thrill, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and I'm excited to be back.
Glad to have you back. And last time we had you on the show is episode 134, which aired in January 2020. Hard to believe, more than a year ago, and a lot has happened since January 2020. Who would have known at that point we had a global pandemic in front of us? And in that episode, we talked about the journey that you and Cassie were taking towards Coast FI and some of the steps that you had taken or been putting in place towards financial independence. So how are you guys doing? What's new? Give us the update.
Well, everything went according to plan, right?
Right.
we got this podcast recorded. We're going to have a great 2020. It's our year. And then COVID hit. But I think all things considered, we really have counted our blessings. I think being in a strong place financially set us up to weather that storm as well as we could have hoped for. We had our second kid in June. So
congratulations.
Perfect timing, have a kid right in the middle of the pandemic, right? We're home anyway, so we got to hang out with them. And I've had a chance to continue to work and grow on my little business, which I think we're going to talk about today. And Cassie's had the opportunity to drop back further into a part-time role. So that was what that Coast FI journey allowed us to do, was to reduce some of that income from her to spend more time with the kids. And she actually got an opportunity to work a little extra on a different, more passion project, working on lifestyle for disease management and diabetes reversal. So that's something that she's been starting in the last few months, that being able to go to part-time has afforded her the opportunity to pursue that passion. So guiltily good. We're guiltily good in this 2021 now.
Well, we will link back to episode 134 in the show notes, and I hope our listeners will take a listen back to your journey. Really an inspiring one. And when we talk about financial independence, or even Fire at Large standing for Financial Independence, Retire Early, I think sometimes we think about it as a finish line, and really it's more about the journey. It's a trajectory. And I think about your story as an example of that trajectory, of that evolution. And so we're going to talk to you about what that has allowed you guys to do as a family. Obviously, a lot has changed. The addition to your family, obviously with Cassie's role changing, the work that you're doing with Improv Rx, and all of that is in part possible because of the steps that you have taken related to the financial plan. So excited to talk about your side hustle, Improv Rx, and the work that you're doing to help other healthcare professionals create a more adaptable, empathetic, and humanizing healthcare experience. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of Improv Rx, remind us about your pharmacy journey, where you went to school, the work that you're currently doing now, and even the other work that you have done as a pharmacist prior to your current role.
Sure, yeah. So I am coming up on my 10-year anniversary of graduating from the University of South Carolina. So
go Gamecocks.
Wearing my Gamecock Pharmacy sweatshirt for all the... This is an audio podcast, so perfect segue there.
Yes, I can see it here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful garnet color. So graduated 2011, and I grew up in Tucson. So I went out to South Carolina for pharmacy school because I just love student loans and out-of-state tuition. And I ended up coming back to Tucson to do a residency here at the VA in Tucson, where I have been ever since. And I've worked anywhere from in ambulatory care, inpatient pharmacy. I'm back in ambulatory care now as a clinical pharmacy specialist doing chronic disease state management. So a really cool job getting to help manage patients' health. And I have a real passion for helping sort of reverse the chronic diseases, not just manage them, but do my best to get patients off their meds and live in a healthy life. And in between, I've worked a little bit of retail. I worked in the community health center. And so I've kind of, it's like the Johnny Cash song. I've been everywhere in pharmacy. So but yeah, that's where I find myself today in my day job.
And we're going to make that connection here in a little bit for folks that are wondering. We're going to provide that bridge between improv comedy and the healthcare practitioner and how that relates to the experience for the patient. Now, I know some funny pharmacists, Cory, but I don't think about pharmacists and comedy that often and the two of those coming together. So give us the backstory. Why improv comedy? Why did you start it? What drew you to that area? And tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing.
Sure. So growing up, I loved The Simpsons. I loved Saturday Night Live. I love watching comedy. And so this was back before you could DVR stuff. You young punks in pharmacy school with your on-demand and your DVRs. So you had to watch the show on Saturday or Sunday night, and you talked about it with your friends the next day.
That is right.
And I loved it. And I enjoyed school, good at science, pretty bad at sports. That's why I pursued pharmacy and not trying to play baseball. But I always had this love of comedy. It's always been a part of my life that I think as a pharmacist, a good laugh really is good medicine. And something I enjoyed. And in an undergrad in pharmacy school, there was an improv group at the University of South Carolina that I went and saw once and was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I didn't do it because I was very committed to my academics. So I kind of put that dream and enjoyment on hold, but always kept that sort of fire for comedy. And then when I finished my residency in 2012, Cassie was like, hey, you're just kind of hanging around. You have this time on your hands. What do you want to do with it? And so I had a birthday coming up. And so I said, well, I've always been interested in trying to play the guitar or do improv comedy. And so give me one of those 2 lessons or classes for my birthday. And so if you heard me play guitar, you would probably assume I did the improv, and that is correct. So it was in 2013, I took my first improv class, and it was a local theater here where I live in Tucson. So just starting up. So the guy who's now one of my best friends was, I took a class, took another, and it was a matter of, hey, you have a pulse and you've taken these classes. We need people to perform. I'm trying to grow this theater. Do you want to do it? Yes, love it. Let's do it. Perform, get on stage. And it's really a thrill. I had a ton of fun performing it. And then eventually, hey, Cory, you've been doing this a couple of years. Can you help me teach my classes? Because he was scaling his business. And so, sure, I love teaching this. And so I got a chance to learn the intricacies of teaching it. And eventually it was, Cory, I need someone to run my comedy school. You're a very well-organized pharmacist. Use those skills to organize my curriculum. Sure, let's do it. Would love to do that. And then while I was doing this and sort of bringing my wife back into it, because she's the real superhero of the whole story, she was in nurse practitioner school. She was busy every night. So I joke I got my improv master's degree during her master's degree of getting her nurse practitioner degree. So I was down at the theater 4, 5, 6 nights a week, coaching, teaching, performing. And it's a blast. It was fun. And along the way, I realized that these skills that I learned as an improv comedian, listening, communication, teamwork, empathy, all of these soft skills that we sort of talk about, but don't really find a way to teach or measure, became better. I was connecting with patients. I was adapting. I was feeling like I was a better listener. And so as we had our first kid in 2018, as much as I enjoyed being down at the theater performing for 5 to 10 people, and, a very small crowd sometimes, and the heat of the era, Tucson summer, I would get paid to teach classes, but not quite the rate as a pharmacist, if that makes, if I'm making sense there. So, and when you're away from your kid and your family, you want to make sure you're really getting a lot out of it. And not that I didn't get a ton out of it, but I was kind of thinking like, what's my next step with improv? How can I push this to another level? And auditioning for Saturday Night Live is just not on the cards because I'm not moving to LA or New York or Chicago, abandoning the family to pursue this dream, which it'd be cool if I somehow hosted SNL. I think I'd have to be some sort of unlikely national hero of something to be famous enough to do it. But then I realized, I'm a pharmacist. It's helped me as a pharmacist be better. What if I push it in this direction of applying it to healthcare? And so that's where I found myself a couple of years ago as I started the business of speaking and doing workshops.
I love the creativity and finding something that you are passionate about and connecting it to your skill set and experience and what you are trained to be doing as a pharmacist. I think sometimes we talk about side hustles or businesses. Sometimes they're connected, sometimes they're not. And I think probably many folks like myself, when I first heard about you and the work that you're doing with Improv Rx, I was trying to find the connection, trying to see where that connection may be. And like, yes, we can always use an extra laugh, but when we talk about enriching our experience in interactions with patients and enriching the healthcare system at large, we all know there's a lot of room for improvement. We've all been through it as a patient, perhaps some to different levels than others. So I really start to see the connection of how pharmacists could benefit from some of the skills and training that we'll get to hear about in a little bit. So dig a little bit deeper for us on the connection between improv comedy and the ability to connect with patients, as well as just your professional satisfaction as a provider. You mentioned some of the softer skills, but take me in the room. You know, Cory, I'm working in ambulatory care. I'm seeing patients. How do you begin to apply this personally in your patient care encounters?
Yes. So improv is actually, I would consider it very similar to a healthcare encounter.
Absolutely.
And here's why. So taking it a step back, when I go and I practice improv when we're not in a pandemic and we can gather, I tell my parents, hey, I'm going to rehearse improv. And they'd say, Cory, it's all made up. What are you rehearsing? And I'd say, fair point. But improv, like a sport, you have specific skills. Like basketball, you got to practice dribbling. You got to practice defense. You got to practice if you're me, you're practicing your slam dunks all day long because you're just flying above the rim, right?
Absolutely.
Well, with improv, we're practicing characters, voices, playing on teams, different formats of improvisation. Like I perform in an improv hip hop team. I rap. I do improvised rapping. Much like an improv scene, we do have certain rules within improv, and I don't need to get into the weeds of that, but there are rules within improv that help guide us in these scenes. Well, sports, you have specific rules, and then in healthcare, obviously, we have the specific set of rules. But within every improv scene, every basketball game, every interaction with a patient, anything can happen within that time frame. No two basketball games are the same. No two improv scenes are the same, and certainly no two patient encounters are ever the same. So you're able to take those skills of listening, being 100% in the moment, and then adapting to what that patient is telling you to provide them the best outcome. One of my best examples is this is one of my patients I was managing for diabetes, and he came into the room and was just demanding a prostate exam so he could get Viagra. Like this was just his connection. He was told he needed to get that checked out to get his Viagra. And how do I navigate? Like I never had that question on a test in pharmacy school. No one gave me the patient demanding prostate exam. What do you do? But also continue to do the job that you're assigned to do, which is manage his blood sugars, but also make sure that he'll trust you in the future to take care of what you need to do. And so, pardon the graphic example of the patient, but the way I was able to navigate it, that was these two words of improv are yes and. Those are the basic words. I've given everyone a free lesson. Yes and are the two words. We agree and we build together. So how can I say yes to this patient who's wanting a prostate exam from me, a pharmacist who decidedly went into pharmacy so I did not have to do exams like that? And so I said, yes, I could give you a prostate exam and you wouldn't like it and I wouldn't like it and you wouldn't get the med you want. So let's focus on your blood sugar and you talk to your doctor about that prostate exam. He said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So it was a way to connect with him without fighting him, right? I think a lot of times we as consumers will fight with the healthcare system. We agree, we get on the same page, and we work together as a team with your patient rather than seeing it as an adversarial issue when they bring something off the wall to your office.
Yes, and I love that. What a tangible takeaway for folks that are interacting with patients. So is yes and, is that like a staple of improv comedy, improv training? Like when you're teaching that and you saw that connection with the healthcare, is that something that's commonplace?
You literally, like day one of Improv 101, you learn this idea of yes and. Yeah, so
Really?
like if you're doing an improv scene and then you say to me, hey, we're on the moon and it's so beautiful. And I say, no, we're not. We're in a bounce house. Well, I've completely negated your reality. We have to rebuild everything. And so that scene grinds to a halt. The energy stops. And I have to explain why I thought maybe we're in a bounce or on the moon. But if I say yes, and it's so beautiful up here, or yes, and we only have 30 seconds of oxygen left, we've now agreed to our reality, built on a detail or a consequence, and have gone down this journey together rather than trying to fight and have this adversarial reaction. And in healthcare, that's what we're doing. We want to build together in the moment. That's all we're doing with our patients. To get the outcome, improv is to get a laugh. With our patients is to optimize their health. And I also am a big proponent of the experience because we don't get to control their health all the time. Sometimes the diagnosis is beyond our control. So we can at least agree to their reality and build together.
I love that. And one of the questions I like to ask folks, and especially Cory, of the journey like you had is when you have such a clearly defined vision of where you are going, and you have obviously thought a lot about how this interest in improv comedy can connect to patients and create a better healthcare experience. That doesn't just happen without a specific passion, without a motivation, without a why, whatever you want to call it. Was there an aha moment when you realized that you could help other healthcare professionals have a similar experience, develop their skills to better their connection with patients, and ultimately better the healthcare system? We know there can be improvement there, as well as improving their own satisfaction as a healthcare provider. One of the things we hear, of course, from healthcare providers, I've lived it, you've lived it more than I have. I talk with many pharmacists, physicians, veterinarians, et cetera. I hear, I'm burned out.
Mhm.
And so there is also this piece of provider satisfaction in addition to the patient experience. So what was that aha moment for you where you saw this connection?
I've just done all of this talk of yes and how I'm going to agree with you. And I have to say, it wasn't so much an aha moment as a slow boil or a slow burn. In my own professional life, I started to realize like I didn't come home as cranky. I enjoyed when someone would give you like, this patient is difficult, I stopped saying, oh no, and started saying, cool, what are we going to do here? Right? It's just that mindset shift that becomes, it's solving a fun puzzle versus dreading not having the answer. So I think that was part of the puzzle. My wife, Cassie, went through improv training and she was like, oh, wow, this is really useful as in my career as a nurse practitioner. I enjoy this. And then we've had nurses, and I have a physician who's now a friend here in Tucson that went through the training, and he was like pure aha. Like every class was like, oh my gosh, I could use this with my patients. Oh my gosh, I'm too left-brained. Oh my gosh, I need to say yes more. And so I think seeing the light bulbs go off in those that I have taught through our classes in Tucson, I mean, you get all walks of life. You get in our theater, we joke we have a rocket scientist. He's an engineer. We have nurses, lawyers, but then we have the typical theater artistic folks too, who live with that right brain a bit more. But it's just that consistent reaction from people who buy into the yes and philosophy. I really see it as more of a philosophy than just a rule of improv. I try to live that yes and life as much as I can. But seeing those light bulbs and aha moments is just energizing back to me. And I realized, oh, this is an opportunity to take what I do 40 hours a week and what I do on the weekends and improve that 40-hour life, not just for myself, but I think we could do something for the other people that, as you say, we struggle. Healthcare's hard. Like, to everyone listening, kudos to you. We have hard jobs. It's okay, admit it. And so how can we make those jobs a little less hard and a little more rewarding? And I think this is one of those avenues to find that satisfaction.
So I have to ask, as a father myself, I suspect dad jokes are regular. Is that fair? I mean, are the dad jokes getting better? Are they getting worse? Where do the dad jokes come in?
I give myself like a 6.5 out of 10. So like I got the littlest one just turned 9 months old today. So he just sort of like, I smile at him and he laughs. So the bar is low for him. And my 3-year-old is just getting like a little sense of humor and a little playfulness. But I can make Cassie's eyes roll pretty good with a lot of my dad joke humor. And just kind of circling back to what you said, you say you don't know many funny pharmacists. The interesting thing about improv is that you don't have to be funny to be good at it. I think improv is perfectly suited for pharmacists because it requires you to listen, be in the moment. And if you are smart, which pharmacists objectively are very smart, you can be really good at improv because you learn the patterns, you learn the rules. And as like kind of left-brainy pharmacist as that sounds, once you learn that, you can play up and find the funny. You can develop that sense of humor. And so if you're listening to this at home saying, well, I'm not funny, first off, we need to yes, you can be funny. You can do this. And so that's my bit of pushback. I think that the smartest people make some of the best improvisers. So just brushing my shoulder off here.
So this connection of obviously bringing your interest in improv comedy or experience as a healthcare practitioner, your opportunity is, I suspect, as a patient, perhaps a caregiver, other experiences, recognizing that this could be done better. Insert Improv Rx. So an opportunity to train other healthcare professionals. So let's talk about more of what you're doing with Improv Rx. What do you offer? You mentioned to me before we hit record that you're going to be doing an upcoming session for a ROCI induction. So give me some examples of things like that. What would it look like to the person in the room when you're doing a workshop? What does this experience look like for pharmacy students? Give us some more of the nitty gritty of what these types of sessions would include.
Definitely. So I offer basically, I'm an improviser, so I can adapt to whatever session or issue or event you'd like. But I can do a good old fashioned speech or a talk on it where I'm talking to your crowd, revving you up, inspiring you. Pretty much what I'm doing to the audience today, just giving you just a bunch of motivation and excitement about what improv can
I'm
do.
ready to go.
Yeah, like I'm glad there's no brick walls in front of you because you might run through it. So
That is great.
meet you, but I think my bread and butter really are the workshops. So what I do with those is I provide, depending on the workshop, and I have a menu of those, depending on what the event calls for, what the particular organization wants. So I could either, I could get right into some basic rules and we just get in and play. And what we do is we have the participants doing improv within 10 minutes. You're doing scenes, you're building things together. And then what we do, regardless of those different workshops, is we break down what happened in those scenes, what happened with those skills, what made that work well, what didn't work well, and then how do we turn this into making ourselves better healthcare professionals? So how are you going to take what you did doing this particular game and utilize it to be more in the moment with your patients? And so whether it's something where we jump right into the improv or whether we do a little bit of background, a little presentation on some of the literature that supports it, because Improv Rx is evidence-based comedy. There is literature supporting the use of role play and improv in education and pharmacy and medicine. So we're pharmacists. We like to have that data to show that what we're doing is worthwhile. And so there is. So I can dig into the data, give you the good background, and then we jump into the fun. So, and what I think the most important thing that comes from this is that people are going and taking risks. They're trying new things and there's no consequences. Like in pharmacy school, for example, you can take a test and if you fail the test, you fail the test, right? In improv, if you do a scene that's not funny, the scene is over, we move on. It's disposable comedy. It's beautiful, and you can learn that lesson in the moment. And I think that's something that it's really resonated with students because they are under pressure 24/7. Get the grades, go to residency, get your job, get your student loans paid off, to tie it back here to YFP. So for an hour, we're going to try something. It could be difficult. We're going to be growing some skills. But the thing that I love, and I've been doing all these virtually right now because of COVID, is I'm looking at my screen and I see smiles on faces of students trying new things that are hard. And when do we have those moments in life where we get to try something and have fun doing it? And I think that's at worst, we come out of this having fun. And at best, you have fun, you challenge yourself, and you realize that like those limiting beliefs that I'm not funny, that I can't listen, that I can't create are not true because there's so much more lurking in a good way inside of all of us as healthcare professionals that are waiting to be there to help our patients.
I'm connecting back to my experiences in academia and even as a student where while we have come a long way in providing, I would say, more digestible learning experiences for students in terms of not as high risk of assessments, making things, more spread out, smaller, lower risk and so forth to help foster the learning experience and take some of the anxiety out of it in an effort to try to help students manage stress and other things that they have going on.
Yes.
I suspect, for pharmacy students listening, they would still say it's a very pressure inducing environment. And you can see it, among students currently that they feel the stakes are high and they certainly can be in a session like this and see value from this. And I can see it happening in a classroom, in a student organization event, as a part of another event on campus, whatever that would look like, where there's just an opportunity to grow, to have professional development, but to have fun and to do it in a safe place. I mean, what an incredible experience. So if I'm tracking with you correctly, Cory, these hands-on workshops that you described as kind of your bread and butter type of offering would be provided to a college of pharmacy or offered at a national organization or a state organization or an organization like ROCI. Is that correct?
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. And those are all places that I've done this. I've done it at a state association. I've done it at national meeting we'll be doing one at a national meeting for a pharmacy organization here in a few weeks. And I've done the small group with ROCI. And one thing that I actually did too was a pharmacy residency group. So you think of pharmacy residents too, that the high stakes, the pressure.
Absolutely.
And so teaching some adaptability, some resilience, and having fun while doing it. So I had a lot of fun doing this with some pharmacy residents as well, doing it virtually, playing together and learning these skills in a very, I hate to say zero gravity environment because it kind of, I don't want to cheapen what I'm doing, but it's just from a world where if you're a pharmacy resident and you're in training and you're taking care of patients, like the stakes are incredibly high. It's life and death. It's literal life and death. So here's a way to step away from the life and death, but be more effective when those stakes are high and you need to communicate with that doctor in a life or death situation or that patient in a life or death situation.
Well, what is the reaction? I'm thinking of my experiences with pharmacy students or other pharmacists, and depending on where they are at, I could see that some might really get into this type of experience. Others may be kind of skeptical, maybe others warming up to it over time. What kind of reaction do you get from the audience during these sessions?
The beautiful thing is that it's different with every session. So I've worked with student groups that they're a little more tentative, they're a little more self-conscious, and so it takes a little bit of, we'll say, prompting from the organizer of the school to send me a private message on Zoom and say, hey, call on Davey or Susie or whatever. And then they're like, no. And then there are some where it's like they can't get enough. Like, we only have an hour. I want to go and I want to go again. I want to go again. And then there are the ones that they're really like uncertain, but they do it. And then they realize, oh my goodness, that was fun. I did a great job. I had that in me. And so it's like I said, everyone is going to be different. And that's what makes it fun for me, is that every group presents its own challenges. Some of them, it's like, we gotta slow this energy down. We gotta we gotta give someone else a chance. And some, it's like, okay, it will be hard, it will be more work to get you to come out of that shell. That is okay. That is my job. Let's do it. Challenge accepted.
Which I think is a whole separate skill set. One I'm guessing you are continuing to hone and develop upon. I mean, there's an art to it, I think, interacting with folks, drawing things out of them, creating the experience in the environment that gives the best shot of participants engaging in the material. But it just depends sometimes on the group, on the culture, what is going to have those types of interactions, what's going to lead to those types of interactions. And I can't just roll by the fact that, Cory, we're in the midst of a global pandemic where you are really just warming up to the work that you're doing and things like traveling and being able to engage with other organizations. And along the way comes a global pandemic, which I would suspect brings things like travel to a grinding halt. Mm-hmm. So for me to jump on to Zoom and to do a talk about personal finance, yeah, I would love to be there in person, but we can make it work at the end of the day. The information is the information, and I'll try to do my best to inspire folks in that environment. Now, the work that you're doing feels like the experience that you would have with the learners in the room is so important to the outcome of the event. So talk to me about how you have been able to pivot with Zoom, with obviously what's going on with the pandemic, how you've been able to be flexible, and the mindset that has allowed you to continue to press on despite the limitations that have been brought on by the pandemic.
So yeah, it's a great point. I picked a wonderful year to decide to be a speaker, right? But don't worry, what I speak on is drawn entirely out of what the energy in the room is. So no, I think you mentioned like the mindset. So one of the things we talk about in improv is that there are no mistakes, only gifts. So you don't go to an improv show, watch it and say, well, they messed that line up there. It's not like a play where you're expecting. You don't know what's going to happen. And so as a good improviser will take whatever happens, whether it's the tech person talking over your scene on a microphone, which has happened to me before, and turning it into some sort of narration of their life. We turn it into a gift. And so this past year of having to do everything remote, well, I'm an improviser. I teach adaptability. If I couldn't adapt, you shouldn't be dealing with me. And so I've been able to adapt the exercises to the Zoom or the virtual platform. It's more of a challenge. Like, it is more of a challenge to get people engaged and involved. Especially, it's very easy to have people just like, I'm going to turn my camera off and like hang out on Zoom. So you have to work harder. Like, in a way, it is harder to do, to be able to do this virtually. But I've adapted the message, I've adapted the games, I've adapted the activities to make it much more interactive for those participants, even though we're virtually. And in the world of seeing things as gifts rather than mistakes or problems, I will not anger your entire audience and say, COVID's been a great gift, right? It's been terrible for many people, myself included. Everyone has been affected by that. However, the gift of doing things virtually has allowed me to maybe reach some groups that would not have been able to reach before. Doing Zoom sessions across the country from here in Tucson, when the travel cost might have been prohibitive for a smaller organization. Well, we don't have that barrier now. So I get to interact with your students. I get to share this message. And so the ability to adapt is baked into what I do. And so it's been fun having that chance to adapt, to see how these different things work, and to get to talk to and interact with a bunch of folks that I might not have had the chance to otherwise.
Absolutely. And I think what you said is just so on point. I mean, the mindset being so important, the adaptability piece being so important, but also the opportunity to reach organizations and groups that otherwise might not have been open to a Zoom session. And because of whether we like it or not, here we are, and we are all comfortable with it now. And so you're giving things like this a try, and obviously continuing to have the impact that you want to have by reaching more folks through the technology and what you're able to do. And you mentioned the evidence. My academic perspective is thinking when it comes to the evidence, Cory, that you reference. I know that there's likely something there, and you specifically mentioned some of the pharmacy and medical literature that's out there. Tell us more about the evidence behind some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I got to give props to the University of Arizona here in Tucson. This precedes me, but there's an article from I think the late 2000s, the late aughts, I guess we call them, where they actually have incorporated improv into their pharmacy school curriculum. So it's a lot of fun. I've been able to help out with those sessions once the world found out that, oh, you're a pharmacist that does improv. Well, we do this improv thing for pharmacy students. Well, I have a clinical specialty. Here it is. It's improv. So I get to go participate in that. But they've written up the improvement in patient communication with the before and after doing their improv sessions. So it's improved subjective communication. In medical school curriculum, it again showed that it improved communication. They felt like there was a quote where I don't feel like I have to do things off of a checklist. I can just listen and adapt in the moment. And most of the medical school students, and I think they got 10 hours of improv instruction in the article that I researched and read, is they felt it was worth repeating. And now put your hand up out there if there's any classes in pharmacy school or medical school that you wanted to repeat. It was like, I'm done with this one, moving on to the next one. So to me, that it's not like where we can objectively measure like you are a 7 on communication and now you are a 9 on communication. But getting at that human side of healthcare, like if students are saying they'd repeat this, I think they find it valuable. And so trying to promote that evidence more so would be something that I would love to be able to continue to pursue, and really with what I'm doing, trying to make that more of a reality in more places for more students to get that training, and of course graduates as well.
And I'm going to, for a moment, Cory, connect the work that you're doing here in the improv comedy, the impact that you're obviously having. One of the things that really strikes me is the compound impact this can have. So if you're training, let's just say a session or you're doing a workshop with 75 pharmacy students, let's be glass half full and say 40 of them are all engaged and they're going to take away some things that they can then apply with the patients who they probably also will share with others and their classmates and have an impact on other folks, could be families and friends, and hopefully have an impact on the practice sites and the patients that they serve and the culture within that organization and within those experiences. So the compound effect of the work that you're doing to me is really interesting. And the influence that you can have on really transforming the healthcare experience through the pharmacists that you're able to have an impact through obviously your training, your understanding of what pharmacists are doing each and every day. So I want to bring together that work. I know from our personal conversations that your family is incredibly important to you, a big motivation, a why of everything that you're doing. And I also know that your financial journey, as we talked about in episode 134, is important.
Yeah.
So fast forward to us 5 years. What does success look like for you in terms of the work that you're doing here as it relates to Improv Rx?
I think success to me would be that I've at least gone down to part-time as a practicing pharmacist because I'm doing too much speaking and training with improv. I think
absolutely
perfect world in 5 years. It's really hard. I'm going to be vulnerable here in front of everybody. Like giving up this identity as a pharmacist would be really hard in this moment to think about not being. However, the energizing thought of being a full-time speaker and trainer, implementing this improv training, whether it be in healthcare associations, other hospital systems, in curriculum at university level, that's where I would love to be. Having that compound impact, as you said, it's one thing for me to go and teach this to a group of 70 people. But if I can go implement it into multiple curriculums in different healthcare settings, dental schools, pharmacy schools, nursing schools, that compound effect is exponentially more. And it's just going back to this idea of something that you would not consider traditionally related to healthcare improv. Like, I would love to be known as, hey, it's Cory. He's the healthcare improv guy. Like, he knows how to make that experience great by implementing these really fun, simple rules of improvisation. And in 5 years, I would love to see cultures change. Like, I talk about this yes and mindset. I think in healthcare, we often are stuck in a world of no. Like, the paradigm is no. So, like, can I get more time with my patients? No. Is this drug covered by insurance? No. Right? I have this new idea for this new service as a pharmacist. No, we don't have the time or the budget for that.
Or now, did I bill for it?
No, there you go. Right? See, you said you're not funny. You just like follow the pattern right there. That is textbook comedy, beautifully done. But I would love to build a culture where of course, we can't literally say yes to every request. Like we can't say, I want 1,000 Percocet, boom, done, right? That would be irresponsible. But when we say yes to the idea of something, so here's this idea for a new billable service, or if a patient's asking for an obscene amount of controlled substances, we say yes to what they're telling us, and that is that they have something deeply going on that we need to investigate and help. So it's not, yes and does not literally mean yes all the time, although I've had a improv student come back married after their first week of improv class. There was like, you said yes and, so someone asked me to marry him, so I said yes. I was like, that is ultimate commitment, beautifully done. But it means at least saying yes and listening. I think that's a big thing that Cassie hears from her patients, that I hear from my patients, is they'll say, you're the first person that's just listened to me. It doesn't mean that we fix their problem all the time. It doesn't mean that we give them exactly what they want, but that ability to listen and empathize with that patient is why are they saying this? Why are they frustrated with our system? Why do they feel like they haven't been heard? And so in 5 years, if I'm helping create a culture of that for patients, and as you said, for providers who are burnt out, I'll have considered it a wild success.
One of the things, Cory, that I want to ask you, because I think I see folks struggling with this when they're starting a side hustle or business, whatever you want to call it, is that they're just crazy passionate about what they are starting. And they see some initial success, and that's starting to build momentum, hopefully over time. And they're having an impact. It can be incredibly fulfilling work. So I know, again, as I mentioned, your family is incredibly important to you. The time that you have with your family is important to you. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance and reconcile the work that you're doing with Improv Rx, the time that you're spending preparing for presentations, obviously pre-pandemic traveling? You and I both know that you can sign up for an hour presentation, but it's much more than that when you think about the before work, the after work, the time that you're spending thinking about that. So tell me how you handle and reconcile that in terms of scheduling where you're spending your time and ultimately your decision algorithm for what you decide to say yes to and what you decide to say no to.
I think the first step in this is marrying up. So my wife's Cassie's incredible. We have frequent conversations about what we want our life to look like, what our visions are, what our dreams are. And I know it sounds hokey, but it's just the line of communication is open so well. So when it comes to the decision algorithm, a lot of it runs through her because we are on a team together. And every time I'm doing something, she is taking the burden on it. Like right now, she is keeping our kids quiet so we can have this conversation. Mostly quiet, I think. So I think that's part of it. But we have blocked off time for ourselves. Like these hours during the week in the evening, Cassie is doing her extra little passion project. These hours, Cory's doing his thing. Oh, Cory wants to do this thing in 3 months. Cassie's, I check with her and we look at our schedule. We make sure that there's no other family things. And she's like, go for it. Like she's all in too. Like she is in this for making these dreams happen. And I think that relating it back to our episode, being in that Coast FI world of, I've been out of pharmacy school a decade, so a decade of hard work setting ourselves up to take some of these risks to pursue the dream, right, is what has set us up. So the algorithm for what I say yes to at this point in my business is pretty much saying yes to as much as I can to get that experience, to get those reps, to get that network built. And then the goal is, my goal that I write down every day is to have to turn things down at some point. That
is right.
Get to that place where you're in such demand that I can't do everything. And so that's how I see it. But really, it comes down to, we have our protected family time, we have our day job time, and then these other hours are for us to work on these things. Or if I wanted to sit and numb myself with Netflix, which is okay sometimes, you can. But don't ask me what WandaVision is. Like that, I have no idea, like no concept of these shows, because at night, from once the kids are down, it's laptop open. And if all I have is an hour of energy, I give it an hour and then it's get that rest in bedtime. So that's how I tried to balance it. It's a lot of it is just cutting out nonsense and unnecessary things that in 10 years, will I be happier that I watched the Cubs spring training games? No, it's fake baseball for a baseball team. So, no, I will not. But will I regret not having given this thing that seems to be resonating with the people I work with? If I don't give it my all, that's going to be the big regret. That's the broad strokes, I guess.
Yeah, and I think some of the best businesses, from a fulfillment impact standpoint, are those that you can turn into a business side hustle, again, whatever you want to call it, but that you do have an impact on others and that you feel a sense of contribution towards the work that you're doing. And if you can build something that is also sustaining, but is having an impact, obviously that's a sweet spot that I think we often strive for when we're working on things like that. Not just speaking, you also have a blog in the mix. You've got a book that you're working on. So tell us more
Yeah.
about those opportunities in addition to the speaking, the things that you're working on with the blog and the book, and what you're hoping to accomplish with those projects.
Yeah. So as a fairly new side hustler, I think the struggle is I have this idea. How do I get people to know about it? And so is it a podcast? Is it social media post? Is it this or that? And so for me, the blog is, I've always enjoyed writing. And in undergrad, I actually wrote a blog for the University of South Carolina's admissions department, describing my day-to-day activities as a pull to get people to come to our college. So I've had that practice of writing. So it's in a world, as you say, where you have limited time, how do we say yes to what's important? Writing is a low barrier to entry for me to like get these ideas out that I have a chance to go deeper on, to take these seemingly unrelated concepts and put them together in something that's really useful. So I've enjoyed getting the chance to write about that. Part of the gift of COVID, the gift, I'll use my quotation marks here, is that I didn't have like the spring of March of 2020, like everything shut down. What are we going to do? No one knows what's going on. So I've had all of these ideas formed in my head. So I put them down in a manuscript for a rough draft for a book. And so I'm hoping to publish that later this year, to provide that value that I can provide on a face-to-face basis, but provide sort of the manual and the stories and the background as to why this is useful, to provide that support and that evidence, and try to establish myself more so as an expert in this field. I think writing a book, as you have done, you're the expert in this. So to the other improv pharmacists out there, let's collaborate if there are others. Like, this isn't I don't have to be the expert, certainly not. Improv's a team sport, but yeah, I'm trying to reach folks with that message of application, really.
They are going to be coming out of the woodwork, Cory.
I know. We have a certain type that's drawn to pharmacy. I know of all the pharmacist comedians, improvisers, you got me on here, so I appreciate it.
What is the best way for folks to connect with you? I'm suspecting that some of our listeners might be with academic institutions or state or national organizations, would like to have you do a speaking engagement or workshop, or just in general learn more about the work that you're doing. How can folks connect with you?
Yeah, so I think my website, CoryJenks.com, and that's CoryJenks. My parents were cheap and did not buy the vowel, no E in Cory. So little dad wheel of fortune joke there. And they want to find me on LinkedIn. That's another great place to connect to. I am on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, but I don't post much. My whole goal with improv is to have people being in the moment, listening, going deeper with their patients. I'm not going to say social media is not useful. It certainly is very useful. I think the value that I'll give to people is going to be from my blog, my book, and my face-to-face interaction. So you're welcome to follow me on Instagram if you like periodic posts of, I don't even know what I posted last. So you can do that. Or on Twitter too. Twitter's kind of can be hit or miss as far as fun or terrible. But or you can email me, Cory@ImprovRx.com email. So the beauty of 2021, there's a million ways to find me. And I love to talk about this. I really want to express my gratitude. This is an honor to be a two-timer here on YFP, and I know that you have all helped Cassie and me on our journey so much. And my hope is that I will resonate with somebody, and I will help them on their healthcare journey and help them with their patients. So much gratitude to you and the team for having me on.
I appreciate that, Cory. And we will link to the blog. We'll link to some of the social profiles, specifically LinkedIn, your email address in the show notes, so folks can find that information. If you go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/podcast, you can find this episode in the corresponding notes. You are contagious. I mean, the whole heart of...
I don't know. You might want to choose your words better in a pandemic year. Sorry.
Yeah, that is true. Not a good choice of words necessarily. But, the energy that you have, the interactions you have with folks that you remember is something that I often think about. And, I always describe these as bucket filling interactions. So, sometimes we have interactions with other folks that can feel exhausting or feel draining. And then we have those interactions with folks that they really exude energy and they're contagious to be around. And it obviously, hopefully makes both folks better in the individual work that they're doing and the desired outcome that they have through that work. And I can honestly say, Cory, in my conversations with you, you are really that individual that is bucket filling. I love the passion for what you're doing. I love the purpose and the intent behind what you're doing. And I think there are really exciting times ahead for you professionally and for you personally and the folks that you're going to impact through your work. So congratulations on the success that you've had thus far. I look forward to following your journey. And please also send Cassie my regards.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Before we wrap up today's episode of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, I would like to again thank this week's sponsor, Ensuring Income. If you are in the market to add own occupation disability insurance, term life insurance, or both, Insuring Income would love to be your resource. Insuring Income has relationships with all of the high-quality disability insurance and life insurance carriers that you should be considering and can help you design coverage to best protect you and your family. So head on over to insuringincome.com/your financial pharmacist, or click on their logo or link in the show notes to request quotes, ask a question, or start down your own path of learning more about this necessary protection.